The Sao Paulo Grand Prix weekend was action-packed, and this carried over to the race itself, with a photo finish for third, an incident-filled start, and another record-breaking win. Let's get into who were the winners and losers in Brazil. Of course, we can't mention winners without mentioning Max Verstappen, who once again was unstoppable last weekend in Brazil. He claimed a dominant 17th victory this season, which also makes him the driver with the highest win percentage in a season, overtaking Alberto Ascari's 1952 record of 75%, to push the record to a 77% win percentage. While Max faced a brief but certain challenge from Lando Norris for the lead, he held on to the top position and pulled a gap from the McLaren driver all the way to the end of the race. Undoubtedly, 2023 has been an incredibly dominant season for the world champion, and he is hoping to add 1 or 2 more wins to their tally by the end of the season. Do you think he can take a clean sweep in Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi? Daniel Ricciardo and Oscar Piastri were both losers from the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, despite showing promising pace heading into the race. The two drivers got caught up in the first corner incident that saw Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon retire from the race. Both Daniel and Oscar were hit by a flying tyre, which at the time they thought would end their race, and they pulled into the pit lane to retire. As they returned to the garage, the red flag was flown, and both teams got to work to repair the damage on their cars in an attempt to get their drivers back into the race. McLaren and AlphaTauri were successful in this, but as they'd come into the garage while the other drivers completed a lap behind the safety car, Daniel and Oscar were a lap down on the rest of the field. Unfortunately, this effectively ended their chance for points, as without another safety car or red flag to allow them to unlap themselves, they were in their own race. As Daniel himself put after the race, this situation exposed a flaw in the rules that meant he and Oscar couldn't do anything more than P13 and P14 in the race respectively, thanks to the retirements of Russell, Albon, Magnussen, Leclerc and the Alfa Romeos. Despite having a very frustrating race in Brazil, Daniel Ricciardo was also a winner thanks to the incredible pace he showed in his AlphaTauri last weekend. Analyses from the race showed that Daniel was the 7th fastest driver over the whole race, and Daniel himself summed this up saying he felt he was exceptionally fast, particularly when he was running in clean air and able to show his pace. This pace of the AlphaTauri was something we also saw in the sprint, where Daniel was once again the 7th fastest driver according to the data, and claimed P9, just narrowly missing out on a points finish. Daniel and AlphaTauri can certainly take good points from their weekend in Brazil, despite the disappointment of Sunday and frustration of Saturday, especially given their back-to-back impressive pace from Mexico to Brazil. Whether or not it will carry over to Las Vegas remains to be seen, but the team will be hoping so as they continue to narrow down the gap to 7th in the constructors' standings. Charles Leclerc was no doubt a loser in the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, as his race ended before it had even begun. The Ferrari driver lost his hydraulics and suffered a PU issue on the formation lap that saw him spin off into the wall, and he took to the radio to question why he was always so unlucky. He was set to start the Grand Prix from P2 on the grid and took to Twitter following his retirement to say that he was disappointed to say the least. Charles has had a difficult year and now holds the award no driver wants of having DNF'd, DNS'd and been disqualified in a single season. If his luck is to improve anywhere, surely Las Vegas is the place, and both he and the team will recharge and come back to finish the season strong. Fernando Alonso is once again a winner after making his long-awaited return to the podium in Brazil following an epic battle for third place with Red Bull's Sergio Perez. Alonso had resisted pressure from Perez throughout the race's closing stages, only for Perez to overtake the Aston Martin on lap 70 out of 71. But the final lap saw Perez make a 1-meter mistake into turn 1, according to Alonso himself, that allowed him to take the place back down into turn 4. Alonso won the thrilling drag race to the line, finishing just 53 thousandths ahead of Perez in what Fernando said is a phenomenal result for the team. Aston Martin have had a tough run of form through the USA, Mexico, Brazil triple header, using the first 2 races to experiment with their new upgrade. Clearly this paid off, with Lance taking P3 on the grid for the race and Fernando finishing on the podium after a 6-race hiatus. This result will buoy the team and help them have the morale needed to finish the season strong and perhaps move back above McLaren in the standings over the next 2 races. Our final loser from the weekend is Mercedes, who, in the words of their team principal Toto Wolff, had a miserable weekend. The Sao Paulo Grand Prix was one to forget for the Brackley-based squad, as Lewis Hamilton started the day in a promising P3 and ended it in P8, while George Russell started in 5th and was forced to retire due to an overheating PU just 14 laps from the finish. Their weekend in Brazil summed up their difficulties in understanding their W14 car, which just a week prior in Mexico had finished 2nd. The team had run a high downforce wing in the hopes of boosting performance in the corners and improving their degradation. However, it did the opposite and just increased the car's drag and perhaps worsened their degradation. Toto said the car operates on a knife's edge and that what happened in Brazil was inexcusable, while Lewis said he can't wait to not have to drive the W14 anymore next season. Do you think Mercedes can salvage anything from their 2023 season in its final 2 races, or will this be their first winless season since 2011? The Sao Paulo Grand Prix was a mixed weekend up and down the grid, with record-breaking performances for some and disappointment and bad luck for others. Who are your winners and losers? Let us know in the comments, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to Apex for more deep dives into the F1 world.